this is our chicken tractor design. We use this for all broiler birds in our operation. This is a custom design that we have iterated through for probably 4 or 5 years now. I think this is the 5th iteration of this design. The keys to this system, or one of the key understandings you have to have when you're entering into a design like this is scale and size. If you're going to raise, 50,000, 100,000 birds on pasture, don't do this. I would not recommend it. You're going to spend a lot of your time just moving a bunch of chicken tractors, and I would encourage you to go through a different route. But like on our farm, we raise 500 to 5,000 birds a year, and this works splendidly for us. I'll walk through a couple different aspects of this design that make it highly unique in terms of chicken tractors that I've seen. First and foremost, it's incredibly light. So like you could just pick it up and move it if you want. That's not hard. In terms of actually moving the thing, the lightness comes into account where like I'll just put one finger on it and I'll just walk backwards. Like it's not hard. I'm exerting very little energy in actually moving the structure, which is really great because if you know my story, I struggle with a lot of health issues, and so any system on our farm that we innovate, like a chicken tractor, has to be able to be moved by my wife or our children, and so lightness is a factor in the design. Another really interesting aspect of this design is its height. We farm here, our context, our biological, ecologic context is Central Virginia. It's very hot. The summers are excruciatingly sunny. We have very little cloud cover. Today, we actually have cloud cover, and it's really nice. And so what we wanted to do with this design is elevate the tractor's ceiling to be about 3.5 feet off the ground, so that when the chickens are foraging within the tractor, they're not afraid to lift up their breast, their chest, and their neck and live like a full statured life. When you have chicken tractors in the heat, too low to the ground, we found that the chickens walk around kind of squatting down because the heat of the sun penetrates, the energy penetrates into the tractor, and then heat rises, as we all know, and the heat just sits right at that foot and a half, 2 foot level that most chicken tractors are built at. And you start to see that the bird's breasts, not because of excess weight or excess growth hormones that are in or not in the chicken systems, but just they drag because they don't want to be in that heat. So this allows the chickens to actually move and operate within the tractor, as they would like. In addition to the height, you also can put these roosts in, which is really special. These roosts are obviously at differing heights. They allow the chickens to get off the ground, which does multiple things for us. One, it keeps the chickens exhibiting traits and lifestyles that you would see a chicken in any other system: roosting, flying, jumping, and so we're really expressing the chickenness of the chicken, I guess people would say. But they're actually able to go upwards, right, as a chicken would want to. They're still a bird, a very different bird, but still a bird, and so they want to get off the ground.
Added exercise.
Exactly
for
right.
The bird.
It keeps their feet clean as well. A lot of people, when they come and they look at our chickens, they always marvel at how yellow or deep orange and clean our chickens' feet are, because they're able to get off the ground, off of the manure, off the dew, off the grass, off the whatever the tractor is sitting on. They're able to get off of that ecosystem and dry off their feet and do other things like that. A really interesting side note: I actually have a scar in my chin where on process day I went to pick up a bird. Now, don't get me wrong, this is process day, right? These are Cornish Cross commercial birds on process day, right? We all know this species on process, they should not be able to walk, crawl, speak, fly, do anything. We had chickens fly out of the coop with wing, like standing, fly out of the coop, and one of their feet, claws, whatever, nails, got me in my chin, and it cut it open, and I still have the scar. And the point is, by allowing them to have better lives with increased height chicken tractors and roosts, you actually have very athletic birds on process day. And that bird, most of our birds weigh between 4 and 6.5 pounds, and so we're not talking little birds here. Another really cool aspect of the design is something that I've been holding up when I'm speaking. It's the roof system. Something that was imperative for us in our systems is to be able to observe all of our animals in the way that we manage them so that we could quickly see leading indicators of health or lack of health, right? So every single day when you move this tractor, you have to lift up, what is this, 80% of the total canopy space of the chicken tractor, and you see everything. You see the diseased bird in the back of the tractor that you couldn't have seen if you didn't have such a big roof. You see all of them, and what you can do in this system is pull out the birds that are struggling. We always have a supplemental tractor where we have struggling birds in it so they don't get pecked to death, and we still keep the ethics of actual, broiler agriculture intact. And so it allows you to observe the system, to see the feedback, right, that the chickens are giving you and be able to act on it. So you don't just have random dead birds at the back of your tractor like we've seen in other designs. That's just not okay with us. That's not in our context for that to happen. Another really interesting thing about this design, and it kind of goes to the beginning, and it's the entire bottom side of it is built with this PVC.
My favorite design.
That's right. It skids really well, but it also protects the bottom of the tractor from just sitting on the moist ground.
Yes.
Every 3 or 4 years, we found that this bottom framing has to get replaced, but it takes 10 minutes to do that, and it's no big problem. But the PVC allows it to skid well, skid on grass, skid on dirt, skid on rocks, and it also protects the wood from decay, or at least it postpones the decay of the wood, which is really fundamental for us. The overall size of the tractor is either 5x8 or 6x8, depending on the lumber we had at the time. That's really the differentiator there. This orange or reddish colored vinyl type plastic material, it's hot in Virginia. What we wanted to do was provide a shaded forage area for our broiler chickens, that actually is shaded. A lot of materials, when they receive the energy of the sun, they receive that penetrating sunlight energy, they reflect some of it, but they also let a lot of it pass through. UV rays, other things like that. Kind of gets into the science of that. I don't know the science well, but I do know this. This material that we selected is decently expensive. Every tractor costs between $150 $200. So they're not, cheap-o chicken tractors. But it blocks, I think it's 95 or 96% of the UV rays, meaning that when the sun hits it, only 4% of that sun's energy actually passes through the physical medium. The rest of it's reflected back at the sun. And so when you're in this chicken tractor, it's actually many temperatures less than it is outside of the chicken tractor. And so the birds are less stressed, they take less water. They use the feeds in the pasture and the supplemental feeds that we give them, comfrey and other things, Jerusalem artichokes, much more efficiently than if they were stressed and hot and always trying to regulate their body temperature. It's actually really relaxing in there. When you're getting the chickens out, it's like, wow, this is cool in here, as in not hot. I don't like being in boxes. You can cut that out if you want, but the point is, it's a really special. It's a really special design that we like. Again, I highly recommend building a design like this that fits your context. For instance, give you some tips. I don't believe one system fits all. If you want to raise 50 birds a year in one batch, that's your context, that's what you're focused on, make this a little bit bigger. Don't make 2 versions of this. And if you're raising more than 5,000 birds on pasture a year, figure out a way to do this differently, because we have 12 of these that we just put in a line, and every single day it takes about an hour to move all 12. And it doesn't matter if there's 2 chickens in it or 30 chickens in it. You really have to, I'll say it this way, just design practices. This chicken tractor is a practice based off of your context. Make it bigger if you need it bigger, smaller if you need it smaller. Make it twice the height if you live in even hotter environments that we do. Add more roosts if you feel like that's important. The general idea here, the general philosophy, the paradigm of this is height, width, and roosting space. And with a roof that allows you to witness and perceive all of the feedback loops that you need to perceive and understand and observe.
Do you have an area where you hang the waterer, and what do you do for like a feeder?
Neither. No for both options. Our waterers are the 5-gallon, I think they're made for like Miller. Is that a company? Miller Manufacturing, Miller Waterers.
It's possible.
It's what I've seen Justin Rhodes do like 5 years ago. They're
Okay.
5-gallon waterers that have handles and you can pull them right out. The way they work is we just put them down in the ground where we want them to be. It depends on topography. Our land is, we farm on the side of a mountain. We go up and down about 500 vertical feet, 350 vertical feet, I should say. And so where we place our water is heavily dependent on what pasture we're in, how we're in it, and things like that.
Okay, so you don't hang it.
We don't hang it, nope.
Okay. So what's this hook for right here?
That hook is when you put this down, we're able to put the handle on the hook, which does two things. First and foremost, I'm not going to lie to you, that was not intentional for any other purpose than to not think that there was a black snake on the pasture floor like that. One day I walked out and I was like scared to death. I thought there was a black snake. And so I decided that for my heart's sake to put this here. I designed it not to scare myself to death. All of our animals, to address your second part of your question, where do we put the feed? I answered the water, but the feed I didn't. Our pigs and our chickens receive supplemental feed. That means that we actually give them something every day to eat, regardless what it is. It could be comfrey, it could be organic, soy-free, and non-GMO grains. The pigs is one. The chickens are heavily being pushed more to the comfrey, Jerusalem artichoke side, which could be another conversation we can have. But the point is, when we give feed to our animals, we never give them feed in any sort of containment device. What we want them to do is, what we really want to do is pair the feeding of the animals with the ecologic disturbance that we're desiring. So for instance, if we were here and there's chickens in here, I would have a scoop of feed or, a bunch of dried comfrey or Jerusalem artichoke tops or whatever it is that I'm feeding them. And I would look in here and I would decide exactly where I want to put this disturbance, right? Anytime you have a force of animals, even if they're just chickens, all fighting for the same feed source in a given area, when that feed is on the ground, you're going to get disturbance there, as if there were cows here. Very different disturbance than cows, but the point is you're getting that same sort of impact. And so when I'm looking here, I choose where I want it to go and throw it right down on the soil surface. I'm not a field tech or soil scientist in any sort of PhD white tower sense. I listen to all those people, but I'm not as smart as them. But all I can tell you is the results we're getting with this system from a regenerative perspective, from a land-based regeneration perspective, is immaculate. They're marvelous. They're so much more than we ever could imagine. We actually have a picture that I can share with you where we took a drone up and showed a picture a year later after we ran the chicken tractors through a pasture, and it was in the middle of a drought, and the only areas of that pasture currently in a drought that were green at any sort of degree of what the green would imply is right where the chicken tractors were. It was just absolutely beautiful. And we were a year later and 3 or 4 months into a pretty severe drought. We run about 30 chickens in each tractor.
Now, is that how many, is that the max amount, or can you do more?
That's the max amount I would do.
Okay.
If you do any more, you're going to have to move them more often. They're also going to live less active lives because there's not as much room.
Agreed.
We've run tests where we put 75 in the very beginning when they're just 2-3 week old chicks. Then at 6 weeks we pulled them out and separated and got to big tractors. It was a lot of work. It didn't really, I don't think, pay off in terms of an efficiency perspective.
As they get older, how many times a day do you move them?
We move these things twice a day. And the reason is twofold, one of which is, as we could get into later in this time we have together, we're trying to innovate what we're calling no-input chickens. It's a bad word for it because there is still input. The idea is there's no off-farm input. They're fed on mostly comfrey and other sort of perennial, protein-dense, high-calorie forages that we propagate and grow on the farm. The more you move them, the less food they need, because the more food they have access to. Obviously, they only have access to the food inside of this, and so the more you move them, the less you have to feed, thus decreasing input cost. But then also, you're increasing the amount of good forage they have access to, which really decreases stress in the chickens' lives. It decreases the amount of poop and chicken manure, I guess would be the technical word, that they exist with, which increases worms and other things. There's pathogens in that manure. and a bunch of other things. Over nitrogen toxicity in the soil. If you got way too much chicken manure in one spot, if you leave them for too long. The point is, the more you move them, the more efficient they'll be, the more regeneration you'll have occurring in your landscape, and the healthier the birds will be. And so we move them twice a day, pretty much their whole life.
So the big question is, Daniel, do you wet your feed?
Something that we have done in the past that I highly recommend. It was very successful for us. We have gotten away from it for a reason that I will tell you after I tell you what it is. We owned a goat dairy, and we milked the goats every morning, and then we fermented our chicken's feed in 100% goat milk, raw goat milk, not whey, not skim, just the whole thing right from the teat to the bin.
That's interesting.
And we fermented in it for about 2 or 3 days, then we fed the chickens with it. We had a really great routine. We really loved what was happening with the grains. A lot less waste, a lot of good bacteria was cultivated and really fostered, or maybe created. Maybe created is not the best word for it, but in that fermented system with that 100% raw goat milk, very fat. You also gave the chickens a lot of minerals and proteins and even calories that they wouldn't have had in a different system. The issue with that is we had to milk goats every day, and our farm was scaling at a very different level, and we sold off the goats and we stopped that practice. When we stopped that practice, we stopped soaking all feeds. That time when we sold off the goats, we also got off of buy-in grain feeds 100% anyways, which is another reason why we sold the goats. What we're trying to do on our farm is to create a system that requires no additional grains for many reasons that I'll only highlight now, but one of them is the need, in my opinion, to soak the grains if you're going to use them. I'm sure some people smart who have the time to do such a test can easily prove that non-soaked grains given to chickens is a lot more wasteful than soaked grains given to chickens.
Especially if it's powdery.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Because
exactly
powder
right.
just goes right into the soil. They step on it.
Exactly. So you're wasting a lot of money. And on our farm, all of the feeds, all of our inputs are certified organic, non-GMO, and soy-free. Bottom line, I don't care what it is. Anything that we buy into the farm that follows those 3 principles, or certifications, whatever it is. And so when we're talking about wasting very expensive feed, we're talking about a very inefficient farm system, especially when organic feed costs 3 times more than just simply non-GMO, and I can't charge 3 times more for my chicken. No. So as a certified organic farmer, my only option in this world is to decrease input cost or increase efficiency, or do both. Because when you're standing at the farmer's market selling chicken for 15 cents more a pound than your neighbor, yours is certified organic, theirs is not, and the consumers are all buying their chicken because they're saving 15 cents. It's just unbelievable to think that you would charge even more than that. And so we're looking for efficiency, and we're looking for decreasing feed costs. Soaking or sprouting or fermenting your feed, if it's dry ground or just whole seeds, I think is very, very important if you are trying to, make your system more efficient or decrease input costs.